Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just couldn't be more pleased and thankful to have back on the line one of the premier truth tellers on planet Earth from the TrendsJournal. It's Gerald Celente. Mr. Celente, welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sean.
Hey, you know, it's a real pleasure because real red-blooded men and women in America love you because you tell the truth. And honest to God, so few kindred spirits these days. I mean, there's more and more of us, which I'm really grateful for. But you truly are one of the truth tellers out there, and I just want to thank you in advance for giving us the time right now.
Oh, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Well, let me ask you now, in your latest TrendsJournal, which says right on the cover, quote, the temple of the moneylenders, right on the front page, you write about, and I quote, the obituary for democracy, saying that elected governments are a front, politicians are little more than wise guys for the money mafia, and I totally agree with you as it pertains to people like Rahm Emanuel, Joseph Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, Harry Reid, Dick Durbin, Barbara Boxer, John McCain. But must we not also be thankful for the growing number of truth tellers who are speaking out against this epic criminality, men like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul, to name but two?
Well, yes and no, in the sense that, you know, Rand Paul supported Mitt Romney, and he tells a lot of truth on a number of levels, and for which I respect him for. But his libertarian credentials are also marred, in my belief, by his anti-abortion stance. So if you're going to be a libertarian, you can't draw the line. You can't say you could be libertarian for this but not for that. So if you want government out of your life, you know, again, only speaking as it is and not the way I want it to be, that you can't tell people what they should do with their bodies. So on one aspect, I appreciate a lot of what Rand Paul does, and on the other aspects, such as, you know, his support for Mitt Romney, you know, I find that, quite repulsive, actually. And as far as Cruz goes, for example, you know, he bashes Obama really well on Obama's abrogation, truly, of our constitutional rights. But he lays off the Bush team and the criminality that the Republicans and as well as the Democrats have committed in waging both the Iraq and Afghan war, particularly the Iraq war, which has been fought over fake reasons. There were no weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. Yet there's not one bit of criminal wrongdoing committed by the people that had committed the crimes. There are no hearings on it. No one's looking into it. Who knew what when is what I want to know. So again, when I look at what comes from the members of the two political parties, to me, it's not enough.
Yeah, and I want to weigh in. I want to circle back and weigh in on that as it relates to, you know, breaking this false paradigm under which people live, this false right-left paradigm, because I don't mean to cite Ted Cruz and Rand Paul as saying, oh, aren't they great Republicans? I'm a Republican. I just love to look to truth tellers. And if you're gonna stand up and filibuster for 12 hours so that we can hear the truth about drone strikes, you know, I got to give you credit for that. But and I know you know that. But let me ask you this, because I did a broadcast about this recently, and, you know, what you wrote on page 4 of the TrendsJournal really resonated with me, and it's this: the great I don't want to hear it trend. Because I just did this broadcast, and the title of it was Proof the U.S. Government Has Fallen to a Fascist Coup. And basically I outlined this hearing in which Senator Lindsey Graham literally licked the boots of the Pentagon brass as they talked about the authorization for use of military force going on forever and allowing the Pentagon to label anyone at any time an al-Qaeda associate and allowing this war on terror to go on forever. You know, the point is this: how come people don't want to hear the truth, Gerald? Is it narcissism? Is it cowardice? Or is it just plain willful ignorance?
I think it's all of the above. People are locked into their belief systems. They call themselves Republicans or Democrats, wing, right wing, and they don't want to admit that what they believe in a false god. It's very common. When you have I'm a political atheist. I would never I don't believe in political religions, and I would never bow to a political god. So when you look at the hypocrisy, for example, coming from the liberals, you know, Obama's out Bush on so many different areas, and you mentioned about Lindsey Graham. Go back to Obama signing the National Defense Authorization Act on New Year's Eve 2011 when no one was paying attention. I mean, it's New Year's Eve. And what do? They raped us of our constitutional rights, Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment rights. And what did we write about in the top trends of 2012? Battlefield America. And that's what Lindsey Graham calls it. Listen to Obama last week. We're at war. We're not at war. We're not at war. A war on terror? I'll tell you who the terrorists are. How about the terrorists being the United States, NATO, the UK, and the other allies that go in to attack foreign countries, sovereign nations? And then when the people in those sovereign nations retaliate, they call it terrorism. How about getting even? How about payback? As we used to say in the Bronx, payback is a bitch. But people don't want to call it payback. They want to call it terrorism. It's not terrorism. I want to get this really straight. If the Taliban came to Colonial Kingston, where I am, upstate New York, an hour and 45 minutes north of New York City, and they came and tried to take over the town, the city, the country, I'd be the first guy out there with a gun trying to blow their brains out. But I'd be called a terrorist by the Taliban for shooting the occupiers. I mean, this is insanity.
Yeah.
And it keeps going on.
Yeah, you'd be labeled as a terrorist by the Taliban-controlled media, and that's what we have in this country is really a military-industrial complex, bankster-owned media, which is why truth tellers like you and what we're trying to do at SGT Report and what's going on over at InfoWars or Zero Hedge or any of the other great places on the internet where there is truth that can be found is so important. Now, I want to cite an interview, speaking of InfoWars, that I just heard the other day. It's probably the brightest spot, most inspirational interview for me that I've heard in a long time, and it was with a whistleblower from the World Bank. She's the former general counsel over at the World Bank. Her name is Karen Hughes. Are you familiar with her at all, Gerald?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Well, here's what was so darn inspiring to me about it. She says, what we are seeing now is this incidence of whistleblowers coming out all over the place in all walks of life, even at the World Bank, and she wanted to make it real clear that not everybody at the World Bank is a bad person, right? And she cites all these whistleblowers coming out and speaking truth to power despite the attempts to silence these people. And she says we are either going back into the Middle Ages with barter as trade, or we are going to return to the rule of law and move forward. And that is what's happening, she says, because the world has woken up. Countries have woken up. Nation states are waking up. Governors of the states of this country are waking up. And I think it's this idea that once you've seen the Matrix, you can't unsee it. It's something I've been saying. You wrote on page 13, behold the money changers. The genie's out of the bottle. We can see the criminality. We know who those people are. Nobody trusts their paper system anymore, which is why she says gold is in backwardation. Is there hope?
Hope and change you can believe in. How's that for a campaign slogan?
Yeah. Am I just seeing what I want to see?
Well, I don't use the word hope. I mean, hope to me is it's a negative word. It's wishing for something to happen without doing anything to make it happen. Of course, you are doing something to make it happen. But what I'm talking about in the broadest sense is, yes, I believe it can change. But it's not going to change as I see it through the current systems. You mentioned, for example, about a Rand Paul and a Ted Cruz. They're in the system. They're not going to change the system. You don't put two good guys in the mafia, inspect the mafia, not to all of a sudden become honest. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a corrupt system. I believe we need two things. We need a movement, a true movement. And the movement to me is restore America. Go back to what worked before. What worked before? Well, the Glass-Steagall Act worked before.
That's right.
It prevented the bankers from robbing the country. They put it in place for a purpose back in 1933. The Robinson-Patman Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Clayton Antitrust Act.
Well, may I ask you about Glass-Steagall? Where do you stand on that? Because the LaRouche Group has really moved heaven and earth to try to get that re-implemented. I interview Harley Schlanger from LaRouche quite regularly, and then I always get these comments from people that say it's a waste of time. The system can't be saved. Why are you wasting your time? The system just needs to collapse, which I agree with, but at the same time, as long as we're trapped in this...
I don't agree. See, to me, it's a fallacy. Again, only speaking for myself. You know the motto of the TrendsJournal: think for yourself. So what I say, I don't tell people, you have to believe this because I believe it. I don't believe things have to get worse before they get better. Sometimes things get worse, and then they get worse, and then they even get worse. They don't necessarily improve. And all you have to do is look, for example, what went on in Egypt, in Tunisia, and all these other countries that had the so-called Arab Spring. They're in dramatic decline. It's not getting better. So going back to Glass-Steagall, my position is I'm looking to restore America.
Right.
And when I talk about restoration, elements of restoration are a renaissance. A renaissance is a rebirth. You took what was the best of the past and you retrofitted for the future. So, for example, the best of the past to me was the Glass-Steagall Act. It prevented the banks from taking over, the money changers from taking over the country and the world, actually, because the United States, we're the reserve currency of the world and still the number one power so far economically. China, of course, is catching up and will probably overtake us because the business of China is business and the business of America is war. Number two is bring back those laws and regulations that made America the great entrepreneurial nation. And as I mentioned, you had the Clayton Antitrust Act, you had the Sherman Antitrust Act, you had the Robinson-Patman Act. You had these acts that were put in place from the 19th to 20th century so the robber barons wouldn't steal everything. Now they got it all. Hey, it's graduation time in the universities. Oh, they just finished. Oh, great. What are they going to do when they get out of college with $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in debt? Which corporation are they going to work for in Slavelandia? Are you going to work for Staples? Oh, that'd be wonderful. No, you can't open up your own stationery shop like you used to in the old days. Oh, you're going to be a pharmacist. Oh, you can work for CVS, Walgreens, or Rite Aid. No, you can't open up your own pharmacy anymore. It's not allowed because you can't compete. Oh, you're going to open up a hardware store. No, you're not going to do that. There's Home Depot and there's Lowe's. It's at every level. It's a takeover. It's a corporate takeover. So what prevented this from happening? The laws that were in place to prevent it from happening. How about those tariffs we used to have before NAFTA? NAFTA, wonderful. Remember all those wonderful jobs they were going to create and how a standard of living was going to improve. I say put them back up and let's trade with each other. We're not getting anywhere by trading with China other than read the news. Hey, China's buying Smithfield. Great. Them 10,000 pigs that were floating down the river into Shanghai, now they could float down the Potomac. Wonderful. China's in charge. Hey, now you want some more bird flu? How about a lot of poisons in your food? You think they're poison now? Don't worry about it. It'll get a lot worse. China's in charge. So what I'm saying is bring America back to the way it was and stop the foreign entanglements. Again, I respect the founding fathers. I respect what this country was built upon, and I want to see a restoration.
Well, damn straight, and I'm so glad to hear you say that because, everybody respects your opinion, and it's just great to hear you say that because you hear naysayers say it's a waste of time, what's been going on trying to re-implement Glass-Steagall. It's like, well, geez, guys, what do you want? We're trying to take steps to take our country back, so let's at least give kudos to those that are really trying to do it on their own, and let's get behind them. Now, you note on page 13 in the latest TrendsJournal that James Madison observed, and I quote, "History records that the money changers have used every form of abuse, intrigue, deceit, and violent means possible to maintain their control over governments by controlling money and its issuance." But now that we all know that paper is a joke, and really countries aren't even trusting each other anymore, central banks aren't trusting each other anymore, so the genie's out of the bottle, as I said before, and nobody trusts this crummy, debt-ridden, evil paper banker system anymore. Is that the system that's behind guys like Eric Holder and Barack Obama? Is that the reason those men are in power? Is because they serve the money changers?
Well, it's both. To me, there are two mafia wings. The military-industrial complex is one of them, and the other one is the money changers. So it's a combination of the two forces, as I see it. Here, let's make this really clear, Sean, for anybody that wants to debate the issue. It's estimated that the Iraq War and the Afghan War are going to cost us $6 trillion. $6 trillion. You've been to Detroit lately? How about a lovely time in East St. Louis? Look around the country. It's decaying in front of us. Look what the people look like. Look how this country's going down so fast. Look what $6 trillion would have been done to restore America. Look at our rail system. It's a joke. It's speeding into the 20th century. compared to what's going on in the world. Go on the New York subway. It's a day in Calcutta. Drive their roads with potholes everywhere. So that's on one end, the military-industrial complex, and on the other end, the money changers. And again, it's not only Eric Holder or Obama. It's Bush, it's Cheney, it's Rumsfeld, it's Obama, it's Clinton, it's Kerry, it's Pelosi, McConnell, it's Lindsey Graham, it's the whole crew. And here's what astounds me the most, is how, just think of the faces, the postures, and the posturing of those people that I've mentioned. What self-respecting person would look up to John Insane McCain, Lindsey out of his mind Graham, Barack, I'll say anything, do anything, backtrack Obama, Bill Slick Willie Clinton, John the Ketchup King Kerry, who's born on third base and thought he hit a triple, along with Romney. All these guys that have had, they've only walked on easy street.
Yeah.
Have you seen one senator's son or congressman's or congresswomen's child die in Afghanistan or Iraq? Have you?
No.
Then you hear these slime balls talk about how our brave men and women have paid the ultimate sacrifice for defending their country. Heil Hitler.
Yeah, you're right. It's an endless boulevard of green lights for most of these people, and it's because they are servants. You know, they are the minions of a criminal system, and
they're part of it.
Yeah.
They're part of it. They are it. There's no secret, Illuminati. It's being done in front of us. It's right in front of us. And people don't want to call what it is. They want to think there's somebody else behind there pulling the strings. They're pulling our chains. They're the people that's them. These are the same people you hated in high school and college that wanted to be class president and head of the student council. They followed their career path.
But, the good news, I swear to God, the good news is that everybody who's paying attention, so not everybody, at least 10, 20% of us, can see this for the first time. If you go back to before 9/11, I couldn't see it, Gerald. I didn't know all of this. The Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain, was fully cloaked. But now he's decloaked, and the genie really is out of the bottle. I think at the end of the day, that is the good news, is that people all over this planet are waking up, and they're calling this system for what it is.
Here's my fear.
Hey friends, thanks so much for watching Part 1 with Gerald Celente, the Obituary for Democracy. Please click here for Part 2.
If you go back to before 9/11, I couldn't see it, Gerald. I didn't know all of this. The Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain, was fully cloaked. But now he's decloaked, and the genie really is out of the bottle. I think at the end of the day, that is the good news, is that people all over this planet are waking up, and they're calling this system for what it is.
Here's my fear, and that is they're going to take us to war. Look what happened with Boston, where they called a state of siege, martial law. They closed down 100 square miles to look for a 19-year-old kid.
Who they probably framed, but sure.
And look at the warrant going into homes without search warrants. People coming up with their hands up, with these goons with their guns being pointed at them. Military in the streets in camouflage. Look how easy the people are swayed.
Yeah.
Fear and hysteria, they use it all the time. So until the people really come to a whole different consciousness, it's only going to get worse as I see it, because I hear the war drums beating. I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again. History is repeating itself. The crash of 1929, the Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, World War. The Panic of 2008, Great Depression, currency wars, World War, trade wars, World War. We're going through the same steps, but just differently. And now Syria. I mean, my God, I listen. Hey, you see John McCain in Syria with the rebels? I mean, with the rebels?
Yeah.
Yeah, Al Qaeda people, Al Nusra. I mean, what's going on over here? And by the way, people that have attention deficit disorder, these are the Mujahideen. I mean, that's their early roots. These were created by Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. You remember the proxy war fighting against Russia to get Russia out of Afghanistan.
Sure. That's what my recent broadcast was about as it relates to Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney in the Reagan administration coming up with the COG, the Continuity of Government Plan, which was rolled out on 9/11. Yeah, I mean, this thing goes back, decades. And so for McCain, this quote-unquote war hero, to now be rubbing elbows with the same al-Qaeda that we were giving up all our rights for and that supposedly hit us hard on 9/11 is it's just absolutely absurd to those of us that are paying attention. But to your point, 95% of the people, it's lost on them.
Exactly. I mean, why is anyone quoting John McCain? How about quoting Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck? How about Larry Moe or Curly? I mean, who in their right mind would take Lindsey Graham, Pelosi, Reid, Boner, or the rest of them seriously? If any one of these guys came to me and started laying their jive down on me, the conversation would turn really ugly really quick.
Well,
but they get away with it because the prostitutes are part and parcel of the same corrupt team.
Yeah.
So they give them legitimacy. So I believe that, I just bought 3 historic buildings on the most historic corner in the United States. It's the only place on each corner where there's a stone building that predates the Revolutionary War up here in colonial Kingston. One's the 1750s. The other one is a 1774, the Academy. And the Dr. Jansen House, the land was first developed in 1650. It was burnt down by the British. It was rebuilt around 1777. And the other corner is the Person House from 1661.
Cool.
And I bought these 3 buildings because I believe in the Second American Revolution, and I'm doing my part to make it happen. I've had enough of the BS. And a violent revolution is not going to work. It's not going to work. I will have no part of it. I want it to be an intellectual, a spiritual, and a revolution of the highest moral grounds that we could stand on. Because that, to me, is where victory comes from. And I believe we can have it. And that's what I'm working toward. And to my working toward it is that with the Internet now, with shows like yours and all the other availability, we can break the grip that the prostitutes and the 6 corporations that control all the media have on us. Because when you look at the numbers of the people that watch TV news, they keep falling through the floor.
That's right.
Getting lower and lower.
That's right. I mean, truly, that is absolutely right. CNN now is truly a joke used in punchlines on The Daily Show. I mean, it's wonderful to see the mockingbird mainstream media prostitutes, which is something you coined and I love it, so true, to see them fall flat on their faces, to see that they truly are nothing more than government talking point agencies, perhaps connected directly to the CIA in some cases. And I just want to circle back because you write the good news on page 10, a brighter future is possible if you want it. And I swear to you that ties into exactly what Karen Hughes was telling Alex Jones, which was so powerful. She said, and I quote, "We are going to come to a good, happy resolution because there is no other choice for humanity. The choice is to go back to serfdom. And we're not going to let that happen." So before I let you go, can I just throw out some key recent acts of criminality and just get your take on them quickly?
Sure.
Benghazi.
Big deal. And I'll tell you why. They kill a consulate or a ambassador, whatever he really was, and 4 Navy SEALs. I read the list of the men killed and women killed in Afghanistan. They never make the news. But one of the big guys, one of the top guys get wiped out, then it's news. Oh, the government was lying to us and we wrote about it. You could pick up our Autumn Trends Journal of 2012, and we wrote about it as it was happening in more detail than it's being reported now. I know the lies that Rice told, on and on. What's the big deal? But how about the bigger deal? There was no problem in Benghazi before El Presidente of Los Estados Unidos, Barack Obama, just before he's ready to board an airplane with his wife, his kids, and his mother-in-law on a trip down to Rio, announces that the United States is becoming involved in the Libyan affair, and they're establishing a no-fly zone, and they destabilize the entire country. There was no problem before that. So to me, Benghazi is a red herring. And the real issue is, how about all these other wars? And again, if it was Manuel Rodriguez whose head's blown off in Kabul, who cares? But hey, an ambassador, hey, it's a big deal.
Okay.
So that's how I feel about Benghazi.
Okay, and how about Eric Holder targeting AP reporters and a Fox News reporter?
Again, you go back to the psycho John Ashcroft under Bush. It's just more of the same. It's just another branch of the mafia doing what the mafia does. And you want to talk about suppressing the media and going after them? You go back to our TrendsJournals in 2003. I stopped writing about what I told our readers, that I'm not going to speak out, because they made it very clear. Who's that little piece of crap? What the hell was his name? Ari Fleischer. Ari Fleischer. That was that little SOB. You remember him. You remember him. You're either for us or you're against us. And you better be careful what you say. Remember him?
Yes.
Under Bush? It's all the same. It's all the same, just different players and different names. None of these men are men. None of these women are women. They're only tough when they got their guys behind them, when they got the flunkies out there that go bash open people's heads because their slave master tells them to. Let Eric Holder or Ari Fleischer, if they personally have a problem with what I just said, come over and speak to me man to man.
Well, I would like them to do that, and then maybe we could do a citizen's arrest, because Eric Holder is also, I think, the one who is directly behind the targeting of patriot groups and constitutionalists. Well, I guess the IRS is supposedly behind the targeting of constitutionalists and patriot groups, but, does it really reach all the way to the Justice Department?
What justice? It's just us, Justus, just us. There's no Justice Department. It's a joke. You see one big head roll on Wall Street? You want to talk about justice? After robbing the nation right in front of our eyes? Have you seen any criminal activities? How come there's no war crime tribunals, as I said, for Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and that little Wolfowitz piece of crap?
I know. Nobody ever goes to jail. And
no, there's no justice. That's kiddie crap. There's no justice. And Eric Holder. This is the guy that's saying that it's okay to kill American citizens.
Yeah.
With drone strikes. I mean, you couldn't make this up in the Third Reich.
No, you really couldn't.
How about rendition? Isn't that a rendition? That's one of my favorite words. Rendition.
Yeah, kidnapping and torture.
Rendition means taking people in another country and torturing them. Isn't that nice? Isn't that polite?
It's so American, Gerald. It's so founding fathers-esque.
I know, isn't it?
Of course, if you've seen the recent Mark Dice video, you'll know that most Americans can't even tell you what Memorial Day is anyway. So that's how far gone we are, unfortunately.
And the other thing, again, is I believe we can restore America. Again, the terrorists aren't the people that are attacking. We wrote in the TrendsJournal, I think it was the winter, just as we were going to press, the so-called Islamists in Mali said that there were going to be a payback for France invasion. Not more than 4 days later, there was the Algerian incident where they took all those people hostage at that oil refinery. And they said it was payback for France's invasion of Mali. And what the hell is France doing in Mali? Oh, they were asked to come over there by the government. Oh, the government that overthrew the democratically elected government. That government, the guys that were trained by the United States to overthrow the government.
Yeah,
government.
The CIA government.
Yeah, and so anyway, these are criminal activities. To me, we have to restore what this country was founded upon. Oh, and then I get these stupid people that say, well, our founding fathers had slaves, and yeah, I know. And they massacred the Indians too. I'm very aware of that. But there were wonderful things about this nation too. And that's why everybody all over the world wanted to come here. And now they've taken all of that away from us.
Yeah.
As I said, they've turned us into Slavelandia. It's USA China.
Well, a brighter future is possible, but only if you who are listening want it, and I know you all do. Gerald, before I let you go, I'd be remiss not to ask you about your trend prediction for gold and silver moving forward. Everybody who's listening knows how badly it's been beaten up, whether that's through paper manipulation or just a free market. I think you know the answer to that. What do you see as the future for the U.S. dollar, and what do you see for the future of gold and silver?
For the future of gold, I'm more into gold and silver. I've been buying gold since 1978. I was around when it crashed in 1980. As a matter of fact, I bought it on the day that it crashed at 875. I bought it at the high point throughout the trading day.
Ouch.
So I remember very well how it felt when the whole thing unraveled. This is a very different time. Back then in 1980, there was no China. There was no Russia. There was the Soviet Union, and everything east of Berlin was locked behind the Iron Curtain. There was no India. Who knew about anything about India? What I'm saying, Sean, it's a global trade right now. Back then, the silver markets were controlled by the Hunt brothers. It was very thinly traded small markets. This is bigger than what the Federal Reserve, the central banks, could do to drive down the price of gold as they drive down the value of their currencies. And to me, that's all they're doing. The paper shorts are driving down gold, while demand for possession of gold, the hard assets, continues to rise, and so too does the premium on buying it for possession. So it's very two different worlds. As for the dollar, it's going to continue to lose its value as a reserve currency. They're going to have to raise interest rates at some point. This is an interest rate recovery. I mentioned to you I bought some buildings. On one of them, I got a mortgage rate at 2.875, locked in for 15 years. So they're going to have to raise rates. When rates go up, the economy goes down. The only reason there's been any recovery at all is because of all the money they've dumped into the system, and beside that, all of the stimulus, as I said, money being dumped into the system and the low interest rates. So that's what I see for the future. And by the way, I am very, very confident that this can be turned around. And you have the TrendsJournal there, and on the back page that we call it the Powell Prescription for a Positive Future. And it's about a young fellow, 27 years old, that wrote in and said that after listening to us and subscribing to the TrendsJournal, I do Trends in the News every day. It's part of the subscription. It's the real news that's going on. And he's changed his lifestyle. He watches what he eats. He only eats organic. He grows his own food. He's changed the way he dresses. He's lost a lot of weight. And now the people around him have been affected. His girlfriend changed. His family's changing. His friends are changing. When people change, everything will change. And it's not just a political mindset. It's a spiritual, emotional, and physical mindset. As I look at it, it's all connected. So when the people reach to higher levels of courage, dignity, respect, confidence, and self-respect, then it all changes, because you don't take BS from jerks. You set them straight. You're not here to be anybody's slave.
That's right.
So when people rise to higher levels within themselves, then the nation will rise to a higher level as well. But as long as people keep looking up to and bowing down to politicians, it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, and we don't. And we do know that real change begins from within. And and that's where the real inspiration comes from. I mean, we can look to God, we can look to the Founding Fathers, we can look to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, but ultimately you have to look within and, correct those things that if you're honoring this criminal system, if you're supporting this criminal system, start to take steps to get out of it. Start to take steps to improve your life and, practice what you preach.
What I would say on that note, by the way, is that if you're honoring those things, then you're not honoring yourself.
That's right, because this is such a duplicitous, evil system.
Exactly.
And
so if you're supporting it, then you're not honoring yourself.
That's right. And when I say an evil, duplicitous system, I'm not saying I don't love America. I love what America used to be.
I do too.
And I know you do. And I know that
that's why I want to restore it. That's what I'm saying.
That's right.
People say to me, they say, if you don't like it, leave. No, you got it wrong, Jack. You leave.
Yeah.
You're the ones that are screwing it up.
No,
Get out of here.
No, we like it, and that's why we're fighting to restore it. Absolutely. Hey, you guys.
So when anybody says, if you don't like it, leave. No, you leave. I like it the way it was. You're ruining it. These are the people that should be leaving, the ones that are destroying it. Who made this up? All of a sudden we have these so-called commanders-in-chief taking our nations to war. Who made this up? Who could stand taller than Washington or Eisenhower among them?
Well, that's right. And in that hearing that I covered in that last broadcast, the Pentagon brass said, the war is wherever Al Qaeda takes the war, and that could be Boston. As we saw in Boston, he said. So they're going to take these illegal, unconstitutional, depraved wars home to the homeland. So for those of you that don't buy any of this and don't want to stand up for truth, you just better be prepared to live as a slave and live on your knees, because the Pentagon themselves are fully prepared to turn America into a battlefield. And that is absolutely not acceptable on any level to any of us who are paying attention. Guys, I couldn't more strongly recommend that everybody support Gerald Celente and the TrendsJournal. You can go over to trendsresearch.com. Please subscribe. We need to support those that are really out there on the front lines, telling truth, putting their necks out. My God, Gerald, you've been doing it for so long. You inspired me.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate your time. And they can find you over at trendsresearch.com, correct?
That's right, and we know that people are having a difficult time out there financially, so we have a discount request page. We try to make the TrendsJournal available to everyone so that they could be prepared for what lies ahead. I can tell you, you won't read history before it happens anywhere else than in the TrendsJournal.
Well, most excellent. I sure do appreciate your time on behalf of the whole audience that's listening. Thank you so much, and let's stay in touch.
I will. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gerald. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that does it, my friends. Thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned. A special SGT report, Unbound, with the one and only Rob Kirby, coming next. And check out sgtreport.com and thelibertymill.com for all of the latest news 24/7. Thanks for watching.